Stanford's horrific passing defense is going to give Miami's Carson Beck every opportunity to bounce back with a big game.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes radio network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. On this episode, we're going to talk some big picture for Miami, how they get into the college football playoff, hopefully, and about tweaking that offense. We're going to be joined by a very good friend of mine, Alfredo Arteaga from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We'll talk about the impact of this loss to Louisville. We'll answer questions from the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. But let's talk about goals. I had already laid out my goals for the Stanford game, which include Carson Beck rediscovering his efficiency and hopefully rediscovering his mojo. Miami reestablishing their running game, which has not been good the last couple of weeks, was really poor against Louisville. Miami cutting down on the penalties and mistakes, and the Hurricanes hopefully finding a third target at receiver because we've been very reliant on 2 guys who have played extremely well. So I'd like to talk about how Stanford matches up against those goals that I have for Miami. When it comes to reestablishing Miami's rushing attack, Stanford's rushing defense is very respectable, ranking 32nd nationally. They give up just 117 rushing yards per game. Now, maybe some of that is how easy it's been for teams to throw on them, but I think the Hurricanes are going to make a concerted effort. They want their offensive line to kind of return to their nasty streak in run blocking. I think they really want, Mark Fletcher, Marty Brown, and I think getting Jordan Lyle going, because since he's come back from injury, he's not really gotten going yet. I think Miami's going to make a concerted effort to pound the rock. I think that's going to be something that even if, they could probably just throw Stanford to death, I think Miami is really going to want to reestablish their physical identity up front. And so I actually like the fact that Stanford's rushing defense has been respectable this year. So, Miami can actually have kind of a decent group to work up against in that regard. But I think the big opportunity when it comes to, achieving one of my big goals for this game, Carson Beck is going to have a chance to, rediscover the efficiency he had earlier this season. Stanford's passing defense is 3rd from worst in the entire country. Out of 134 FBS football teams, Stanford's passing defense ranks 132nd. They surrender 304.7 passing yards per game, just under 305. Dale. And Stanford has just 1 interception all season long. If Carson Beck has another multi-interception in this game, Houston, we have a problem. I'm not expecting that to happen. So Stanford's passing defense on paper gives Carson Beck an opportunity. And Stanford's struggling pass coverage, I think, can also help Miami get additional receivers involved. Because I take nothing away from the 2 guys who have really been carrying the passing attack this year. CJ Daniels has been fantastic, and Malachi Toney has been one of the best receivers in the entire country. Like, Malachi has been so good that we no longer have to include the word freshman when we talk about how good Toney is. First couple games of the year, he's one of the best freshmen in the country or the best freshman receiver in the country. No, Malachi Toney is one of the best players on offense, one of the best receivers in the country, period, regardless of the fact that he just turned 18 a few weeks ago. But I would love to see someone like Josh Moore get back into the mix. Remember the breakout game that he had against USF? 2 long touchdown receptions. We haven't really seen much of Josh Moore since in receptions or in snap count. I think in this game, especially with the specific matchup traits that he poses with his size and his speed, he can really stretch out a defense. I would love to see this be a game when Joshua Moore gets more incorporated again. You know, Keelan Marion at times has been pretty good this year. Keelan just really hasn't had the breakout game. And then, you know, I think, contractually obligated to say the name JoJo Trader at least once in every episode, or else you guys are going to be very angry in the comments. Yeah, I would love. JoJo Trader played one snap last week. I would love to see JoJo get incorporated into this game and make some big plays. I'm rooting for all of these guys to step up. The tight ends as well. I want more consistency there, right? Alex Bowman plays a lot of snaps. Let's get him his first touchdown of the season. He scored 7 touchdowns at Tulane last year. Not Brevin Jordan. Elijah Lofton. Brevin Jordan was his former, his mentor. Elijah Lofton. I want to see Elijah really get off and make some big plays this week. So, you know, going up against a passing defense that ranks 3rd worst out of 134 FBS teams, you would think this could be an opportunity for Carson Beck to get going and for his weapons to get going. I am all for it. Miami's pass rush could get going again, and their pass rush win rate has been consistently good. The issue that they ran into against Louisville was a Jeff Brom masterclass and good enough execution from Miller Moss to get rid of the football in under 2.5 seconds on every freaking single play. Jeff Brom had a plan, a quick passing game. Not every team can execute that the same way that Louisville just did with their talent. But they schemed around Miami's pass rush. This week, I'm not so sure if Stanford is going to be able to do that the same way that Louisville was able to do, especially if Miami is able to win on 1st and 2nd down, keep them behind the sticks. 3rd down, you have the opportunity to go off. And by the way, we don't even know who Stanford's quarterback is going to be this week. We'll get to that in a second. But Stanford, in protecting their quarterbacks this year, they've given up 22 sacks already this season. 22. It's bad. So Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor, if he plays and if he is fully healthy, we're not 100% sure about that. He did, as you all saw, was hobbled and left the Louisville game injured. So hopefully Akeem is good to go, if not this week, in the very, very near future. But I want to see Miami's pass rush get off as well. So those were 3 of my big goals for this game. The other one is cutting down the penalties. You know, that has more to do with Miami. It has more to do with the man in the mirror than it does with anything Stanford is going to try to do this week. But that's something Miami must solve from within. I want to see the procedure penalties at a minimum. Very, very disappointing to see an offensive line as good as Miami's commit so many dumb pre-snap penalties. And penalties in general, the last 2 weeks, Miami has been penalized 22 times in the last 2 weeks. Like, that's bad in 4 games to be penalized 22 times. In 2 games, it's horrific. So we want to see that get cleaned up as well. As far as like Stanford's quarterback situation goes, you know, it's only Wednesday. We're going to be monitoring this throughout the week. You know, if you guys watch Stanford versus Florida State, you know Stanford had a number of injuries, including their quarterback Ben Gulbranson got injured on a sack. He injured his knee. Gulbranson, from the research I've done, is listed as questionable. Like, it's not like a season-ending type of deal. It's more of a week-to-week type of injury, but he is questionable. We'll find out once the injury reports come out the next couple of days. If it's not Ben Gulbranson, backup Elijah Brown, who finished the Florida State game, would start. He finished that game 6 of 13 for 90 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. You know, I don't know if it necessarily matters which quarterback starts. This is a game Miami should absolutely win unless there's an element of implosion, which there's no reason for that. Miami still has everything to play for in front of them. They're a playoff team if they win out. We'll talk more about that. But, yeah, we got some really good questions on the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. If you want to try it free, click the link in the show description below. You get text messages directly from my phone to yours, one-on-one questions and answers, breaking news, show updates, recruiting scoops. That's what you get on the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. Try it free for 14 days. If you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value on there. People are asking about the impact of the Louisville loss. A couple questions about Carson Beck, about Miami's offensive philosophy. We will get to all of that because we're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It is their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. The swivel screen is a game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level every week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Plus today at onepeloton.com. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I will have an episode later on today. We'll update our ACC football power rankings, which unfortunately will see Miami make a drop, as you would expect. We'll talk more big picture about Miami as well later on in this episode when Alfredo Arteaga joins us. But all right, let's get to questions from the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. And by the way, you guys are shot out of a cannon. We get this one from the 5112. Is Shannon Dawson's play calling crippling Carson Beck, or is Carson Beck's drop off in play crippling the play calling? A chicken or the egg situation? The answer is usually a little bit of both, but I would say that in a game where your quarterback throws 4 interceptions, and in at least 3 of those, he had checkdowns open underneath for first downs, I think it's fair to put more blame on the quarterback. And Carson Beck was here right now. By the way, he's speaking to the media later today. He would probably say the same thing. Now, that doesn't mean the offensive game plan was perfect. Too many of those going back and back and back to those wide receiver screens that were getting blown up more often than not. Not enough outside runs, in my opinion. I think that's something Miami needs to adjust in the future. But, if you're going to assign blame for the last game, I think you got to give blame, You're not going to win too many games when your quarterback throws 4 interceptions. Shannon Dawson did not throw 4 interceptions is the way I would answer that question, but I appreciate the question. We get this one from the 386 area code. I'd like to know if the loss to Louisville hurt us and how bad. What are your thoughts with the recruits that were there at the game? The good news is there were not many recruits at the game, because given it was a Friday night, I think we only had less than a half dozen recruits there. Now, one of them was Derek Cooper, who I don't really think is going to Miami regardless. I think he's going to end up staying locked in with Texas. So I guess you could say you missed an opportunity to really impress Derek Cooper. It is what it is. In terms of outside perception of recruits, the timing of this might have been coincidental, but a couple days after Miami lost to Louisville, 2027 quarterback Trent Seaborn, who was, I think, our top, probably may still be, because we don't give up on guys when they commit elsewhere, but Trent Seaborn, one of our top quarterback targets, committed to Alabama this week. That probably had a lot more to do with, he lives in Alabama, probably had a lot more to do with Alabama than it did Miami losing that game. But, it had Miami been blown out by a really bad team, you could say, oh my God, recruiting, yeah, this is a disaster. Or if this was Miami's 3rd or 4th loss of the year, I don't think the loss in itself to me doesn't change recruiting drastically. Because Miami still, again, they still have everything in front of them if they win out. So, if Miami does slip up and lose more games, that's where you could see negative impacts on recruiting. And also, I would say it's good fortune for Miami right now that, Florida has a coaching vacancy, which makes their recruiting board uncertain until they hire their next coach at the very least. Florida State has a situation where nobody wants their head coach to be their head coach right now. That affects recruiting. Those are, two of Miami's top recruiting rivals. So I think that stuff does help that Miami has a much better situation right now, certainly than Florida State. And then Florida. With Florida, it depends on who they hire to replace Billy Napier. Like if they hit a home run, like, Lane Kiffin would be a big move. They're trying to get Lane. Something like that could, Florida would be better off with Lane than another recruiting cycle of Billy Napier, for example. But Florida State being stuck with Mike Norvell is something that certainly helps Miami in the short term and in the long term. And on that note, we get a question from Jeff who says, hey, Alex, what is the procedure for fired coaches during the season? Are there players available to transfer immediately, and can they play immediately? Jeff, that rule was changed earlier this month, in fact. So here's how, and you're probably asking, like, hey, can Miami take a bunch of players who are on the Florida roster right now? The answer is no, you cannot. So a new NCAA rule that was passed early October, athletes whose head coach is fired now will have a 15-day transfer portal window, but it doesn't begin until 5 days after a new coach is hired or announced. So if what you're angling at is, are Gator players available? They're not. They're not available until after they hire their next head coach. And, listen, if they hire, somebody like Kiffin, they're probably holding on to most of their roster. If they miss out on their top targets and they hire another Billy Napier type, then, open season. But until then, no, we cannot poach anybody from their roster. We get one from David in Vero Beach who says, I am worried about Akeem Mesidor. His injury in the first half Friday was a non-contact injury, which are oftentimes the worst. He gave it his best after his injury, but I feel like this hurt us. Louisville ran right at him after the injury like a shark smelling blood, and they had great success doing this. Go back and look at the tape. You will see. The coaches finally took him out in the fourth quarter. He wasn't happy. My seats are right behind the Canes bench, and I saw them having to calm him down after being taken out. I like the fact that he wasn't happy because Akeem Mesidor is a dog. They continue. I know Mario doesn't disclose much about injuries. No kidding. But I'm wondering if you have heard anything. Akeem is so important to us bouncing back. So from what I can tell, they don't think this is like a long-term injury for Akeem. I think he's going to play again a lot this season is what I gauge. I'm totally open to the fact that I might be wrong because with Miami and injuries, you never know. But I don't think this is a long-term thing for Mesidor. Now, on that note, if they want to give him some rest, Stanford is on paper the easiest game by far you have left on the schedule. So, maybe if he doesn't play or doesn't play a lot this week, hopefully he's not needed. He's going to be needed a lot more the following week in Dallas against SMU, for example. So, but my understanding, I don't think Akeem is a long-term thing. So we'll see. We get one from Andrew P.A., Andrew in Pennsylvania. Why do we not incorporate more playmakers on offense? I understand that Mario has to do the work, has a do the work, get rewarded mentality, which I agree with, but we are clearly lacking a viable third option at receiver. He says maybe it's the plays and reads, but it feels like Malachi and CJ are the only options that Beck wants to throw to. Andrew from PA. It feels that way as well. It's hard for me to answer that because, again, it's a combination of what the quarterback is seeing, who he's comfortable throwing to, not just what the play caller is calling in terms of Shannon Dawson. But I think we all agree we want to see more playmakers emerge, right? It's obvious C.J. Daniels and Malachi Toney are the two guys that Carson Beck trusts the most. So, I think others need to earn that trust. And, I think a game like this one is a good one potentially to experiment with. I talked about how bad Stanford's passing defense is on paper. So if you're going to get more guys involved and kind of build that chemistry, this is a good week to start doing that. Rich says, why does Miami refuse to run the ball to the outside? Your guess is as good as mine, Rich. We're going to talk more about that in the upcoming segment. We get one from Jonathan in Pennsylvania. He says, if Louisville, Georgia Tech, Virginia, and Miami all win out, is there a possibility all four ACC teams make it to the college football playoff? I think the College Football Playoff Committee would rather shut the sport down than put in 4 ACC teams. So right off the bat, I will tell you that is not happening. And also, and I might be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure your scenario cannot play out that way because one of those teams would have to lose to one of the others in the ACC championship game. So I don't think it's possible unless Jim Phillips is like, you know what, we're going to cancel the ACC championship game because we want to try to get 4 teams in. I don't think it's possible that all 4 of those teams win out because somebody's got to lose to another one, even if they don't play in the regular season. But, in that scenario, if I'm going to entertain your scenario, Georgia Tech would then have the best resume because that would involve them going 13-0, unblemished, including a win over Georgia if they win out. Miami, I think, would have the second best resume because they would have 1 loss, to a good Louisville team and a lot of quality wins, right? Louisville, despite the head-to-head against Miami, which is obviously big, would probably have the third best resume. Virginia would probably get the short end of the stick, even though they beat Louisville, with a loss to NC State, and that was a non-conference game, just so people know. That's why it doesn't count against the ACC standings. But I think Virginia would then have the worst resume out of those. It's unfortunate for them that Florida State sucks because at the time that felt like a huge win for them. Now, not so much. That's how that would play out. All right, we're gonna talk shop here. Some big picture stuff with Alfredo Arteaga from the 3 Yards Per Carry Miami Dolphins podcast. He covers the Canes intently as well. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Oh, my friends, we're certainly not done yet with Game Time. This is the only ticket app that I use. And if you're looking for tickets for the Stanford game, starting under $10 right now, guys, you can get in and watch your Miami Hurricanes. I love college football, the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy. There's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself, with endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, because you don't have any of that nonsense. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Guys, the app makes it super simple. I can even see the exact view from my seat in the app before buying. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go! Download Game Time today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Our next guest is someone I have known for years, and he is the awesome host of the 3 Yards Per Carry Miami Dolphins podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. But he follows the Miami Hurricanes intently, and I thought he was making some really good points and some compelling points on his social media during Miami's loss to Louisville. And you see he's got the Canes cap on. So our man, Alf Arteaga, is absolutely ready. And Alf, I wanted to start with this on a big picture point that you made right after the game. You said, blaming Mario for this is idiotic. This was on the offensive staff and Beck with his first 2 YOLO picks. Move on. There is a playoff system. Rein in Beck's obligatory 3 YOLO balls a game. The last one was bad luck. Play better in the first 3 quarters. All right, so you're not putting that loss directly on Mario Cristobal. Talk a little bit about what went wrong for Miami.
What went wrong was really not really their game plan, because I know that some of the players have said, "No, we had a good game plan. We executed as well as we could, and we can't turn the ball over." They said all the right things, like a college team is supposed to. But their main issue was the offensive game plan and Shannon Dawson. Look, you could still stick to what you do well, which is run inside zone and run duo and run power. But teams have already decided, and they're going to keep doing this. They're going to play odd fronts, and they're going to jam that A gap on you. And they need to have some type of system where Beck can check at the line to outside zone runs, because they have the offensive line where they can leverage fronts into big gains. It's just something that they can do. The second thing is, Carson Beck was absolutely fooled in this game, in the RPO game, because Louisville kept changing the numbers in the box, And Beck was, you could see him taking down the clock to like 5-6 seconds. And he's like, okay, this is what I see. I see the numbers to throw it. I see the numbers to run it. And then Louisville was just jumping out like at 2 and 3 seconds left. And the last thing is Louisville essentially their entire game plan on a lot of early downs was to induce screens by showing blitz looks, and then they were peeling out of it. And Shannon Dawson was essentially, you could almost see like the wheels turning in his head, like, you know what? If we catch him here, and it did one time, right?
Yeah, it did.
If we catch him here on the right blitz, we could throw this tunnel screen and it could go a long way. Louisville knew this, and Louisville's just peeling out and rallying to tackle. It was a brilliant game plan, and Miami, for whatever reason, and you would think, going undefeated is important because you could get that bye week. That bye week is essentially gone, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe they get a little lucky here with some losses elsewhere. But you got to think that the bye week is gone, so going undefeated was kind of important. They just look like a team that said, we have the better athletes, we have the better team. We'll play our game and we'll just win. And then before you know it, you're in a tussle in the fourth quarter. And if you're in a close game in the fourth quarter against any capable, let's say, top 40 team, they can beat you. And Louisville did.
I feel the same way about them, just thinking they could line them up and win. Like it was apparent. Now, I try to judge coaches by what they do, not by what they say, because if we try to read too much into media availability, they're trying to tell us as little as possible. But people have noted that, I guess, when we heard from Shannon Dawson earlier this week, he didn't really indicate like, hey, we're going to try to do some new stuff. Like, he made it sound like, you know what, we're going to keep leaning into what works for us and just try to execute it better. And that concerns some Miami fans, thinking, okay, he's basically telling us we're not going to incorporate any outside runs. But again, I say, show it to me. I judge you by what you do, not by what you say. So do you think there is an opportunity for Miami to open up that a little bit more throughout the rest of the season?
Yeah, and I think you have the right quarterback to give him a little bit more responsibility. He needs some checks, some simple checks. If you're calling a run play, give him 2 plays. You could give him 2 plays in the huddle. You got plenty of time. And then he can check to one or the other depending on the front, because teams are just loading up against your inside zone run. So it's like they're telling you, we are not going to give you this, right? Now against a lesser team, like against Stanford, they might run for 250 yards, mostly on the inside, because Stanford doesn't have the athletes that Louisville does, right? But you need to have a way to adjust at the line, because teams kind of are clued into what you're trying to do. So, yeah, give Carson Beck a check at the line. It's just 2 plays. We're not talking about reinventing the offense or giving them a full audible system. Give them 2 plays at the line, 1 outside, 1 inside, and let them work from there.
Now, we had a little chat before we started rolling, and it seems like you have done a little bit of research on, what it would take for Miami to punch their ticket to the college football playoff. I think we can all agree, if you run the table, you can't keep Miami out. Is there even a scenario where they could get in with, not that any of us want this, but could they get in possibly with 2 losses?
Yes, but one of them cannot be against Pittsburgh, okay, at the end of the season. So if you look at their schedule, and it's hard to just say where these teams are going to be toward the end of the year. But if you look at where these teams are going to be at the end of the year, a lot of those teams that they're going to face, the Hurricanes are going to be double-digit favorites. Pittsburgh's the only one that's going to creep under 10 points, and it's on the road. It's at the end of the season, and if you look at their roster, they returned some players from last year. They lost their tight end. They lost a wide receiver. They lost, I believe, they lost their quarterback. But they improved in a couple of areas. Their defense is better. Pittsburgh is the one where they can overtake you in the standings by the end of the season. So you can't lose that game, because that game could be for a berth. meaning not for Pittsburgh to get in, but for Miami to get in or
Right.
somebody else to get in over Miami. So it's looking like that game is the most important game left on the schedule. They cannot lose that game.
Man. Now, I feel like you and I are probably the right people to talk about this because not only have we been following the Miami Hurricanes for decades, the Miami Dolphins as well. So we're a little weathered with this stuff, all right? And I know that the PTSD that kicks in for Hurricanes fans is you lose a game and people start to say, "Oh, here comes the slide. Here comes another Mario Cristobal special. We're going to lose another 1, 2, 3 games." Do you, maybe with the makeup of this particular team, do you think this one can be different, or are you worried that another loss or two can come?
No, I really do like this team. This team is different than last year. Last year, you can almost tell from the Cal game on. When you saw the Cal game, you were like, this is not going to happen for them this year. This defense is just not good enough. And the secondary is injured and not playing very well, or either too young. And you just looked at it and you're like, is Cam Ward really going to just drag us into the playoffs this year? And I thought, that was going to happen. But as far as winning a national championship, that's not the case. This team is much, much more complete. I really like their offensive line. I think that offensive line, even Brockermeyer, who hasn't played all that great as of late, I think he's an NFLer. Okay, I think he's gonna be a day 3 or a UDFA type. You're talking about at least 4 guys on that offensive line are going to play on Sundays. That's a good thing. And if they can lean on it, stay healthy, because that's important. If they could just stay healthy, then this is a much more different team, a much, much better team, much more balanced team. And I do think they're a playoff team.
Wow. Alfredo Arteaga, we appreciate you. And by the way, you guys are doing great things on the 3 yards per carry Miami Dolphins pod. How hard has this season been, Alf? Because I remember when I was doing Miami Hurricane shows every day in 2022. They lost 7 games. They lost to Middle Tennessee. I feel like you're going through some of that same stuff.
Yeah, it's tough. Okay, like you watch these games and you're like, they kind of look like something. They look like they're going to win this one, and no, they somehow snatch defeat from the jaws of victory every single Sunday, and it doesn't seem like it's going to get any better anytime soon. So it's one of those seasons where you're just counting the days until it's over.
Well, I respect the work that you do. Alfredo Artiaga, follow him at 3 yards per carry on X. Thank you so much for the time, Alf, and enjoy the rest of your week.
All right, thank you for having me.
Thank everyone for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe. Make sure to check me out on X at Alex Donno, and we'll talk to everyone tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.